The unemployment rate for adults with disabilities in the U.S. is double the unemployment rate for adults without disabilities. Many people hold the belief that this gap exists because A, disabled humans are not as capable as non-disabled humans, or B, disabled humans put more strain or stress on the work environment. While these beliefs are common, I don't believe them to be true, and 7 years ago, I started a restaurant to prove to the world that there's a different way to view and employ people, both with and without disabilities. Today, I invite you into my business, my mind, and my heart, and encourage you to pause, take a breath, and be willing to stretch your perspective, maybe even flipping it upside down. Hi, welcome. You probably clicked on this video for one of two reasons. The first one being, wow, that sounds like an interesting business concept. I'm curious to learn more. Or two, something in the title made you pause and think, isn't it a little odd to specify that you hire people with disabilities? Is that not like saying that you hire people? Either reason is completely reasonable, and I'm really excited to have you here today as I share not only about the business model that I do have, but some of the life events that led me to creating the business model that I have. We are going to be covering three things over the course of the video today. First of all, why I started a restaurant and not a different type of business. Number two, why I have an emphasis or focus on disability employment. And number three, why I hope through the work that I am doing, our world and our culture gets to a place where we don't need to emphasize when people with disabilities are being hired because it becomes the norm and not the exception. Before we get too into the weeds with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to my business. Welcome to my business, Chez Genèse. We are a French-inspired restaurant in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina, and we offer an integrated hiring model, meaning that 50% of our team is disabled and 50% is non-disabled, and we are on a mission to change the way that our world both views and employs people with disabilities. We are most famous, I think, for our weekend brunch, and in specific, our lemon ricotta pancakes. Now that you know the finished product, I want us to rewind and go a little bit back to the beginning. All right, it's story time. So, back to point number one. Why did I start a restaurant? It's not because it's just easy and fun. I started a restaurant. Spoiler, it is not. I would not recommend it to anyone. But I started a restaurant because the restaurant industry is my industry. That started with a love of food, truly, since I was a little girl. Ever since I started eating, I was fascinated by food. Some of my favorite memories and moments happen around the table. I used to make food out of construction paper as a kid when I got bored as a pastime. And then in high school, I really started, my love of cooking really took off. It became a creative outlet, a way for me to express myself, to experiment, to play, to try new things. And it was just this really, I fell in love with the tangible magic of cooking where I could spend time creating something and then I saw other people just enjoy it and be excited and feel cared for through the act of eating a meal. And so that really led me to pursuing culinary in college once I graduated high school. And I went to community college, shout out to Caldwell Community College, and I did their culinary program. And while I was in cooking school, I started working in restaurants. And that really is where the majority of my skills developed. The day in, day out, you practice, you chop over and over and over again, till you blister, till you bleed, till you blisters heal, all of that. You just are in it and you learn it. And it's really hard, but it kind of gets into your blood or it doesn't. And it really got into mine. For whatever psychoanalysis reasons you want to develop about me, the restaurant industry became my industry, and I cooked while I went to school, and then when I graduated, I moved to France. So I spent the best year of my life living and cooking in the Burgundy region of France, where I fell in love with French food and culture and the sense of service and hospitality, and really just soaked in and marinated in all of the feelings that gave me. And I brought that back with me, and hopefully when you come into Chez Genèse, you experience that experience that I had and you feel some of those same feelings. I moved from France to Greensboro to go to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro and studied hospitality management. So when I say I started a restaurant because it's my industry, truly from the time that I was 18 years old until the time that I started this restaurant, which was, a 12-year process at that point. I was in restaurants, I was working, I was learning, and all of that is really important for several different reasons. One, I didn't go into this business innocently. I went into it with a lot of understanding of how hard the work would be because I had been doing the hard work for a long time. And secondly, I started a restaurant because that's the business that I love. That's the industry that I want to be in, that I am in, and that I want to see change in. A lot of times when businesses are started with a model of disability employment, the person starting the business is thinking, what business could I create that a person with a disability would be able to work in? That wasn't the case for me. I started a business that I knew I had experience in, that I would be good at, that I liked and that I was passionate about, and I was convinced that I could create a solid team with both people with disabilities and without disabilities. So it had more to do with the industry that I wanted to start and less about whether or not someone with a disability would be able to work in a restaurant. And I want to lay that out as an important factor and part of my story for two reasons. One, people with disabilities can work in any industry, and they should work in any industry. Right now, there's a pretty limited number of job opportunities for people with disabilities, and I want to see that change. And the way that that's going to change is by people in all industries recognizing that people with disabilities are going to be a value add to their industry, and to stop discriminating against people with disabilities in their hiring practices. Number two, it's really important to me to push against the bias that we have culturally that people with disabilities are less capable than people without disabilities. And part of where I think that bias comes into play is when we have businesses that are started with the purpose of hiring people with disabilities, but by people who started a business that they have no experience in. That ends up perpetuating this idea that someone with a disability doesn't do as quality of work as someone without a disability, when oftentimes I think it's more a reflection on the person who started that business not really knowing what they were doing, and then that trickles down into their team. So the best way that we can change the way disability employment happens is by opening that up to all industries, and all industries already being the expert in their field, then bringing in people with disabilities. It's going to start to break that stigma or that stereotype that people with disabilities can only work in coffee shops, or that in tech, or on a factory line, or collecting carts at a grocery store. Like, it's going to change the narrative around what job possibilities there are for people with disabilities. And by working in jobs where people already are good at what they're doing and adding to that value, it's also going to shift the way that the world sees the disabled workforce. So that tells you why I started a restaurant, but doesn't really tell you why I am so adamant about disability employment and changing the way that disability employment happens in our world. That goes back to some of my own personal life experience. I have 3 cousins with autism, grew up with autism in my family, and from a very early age just had a general comfort level and understanding of autism, and also was aware that the way that my family interacted with my cousins and understood autism was pretty different from the way that most people did. So that stuck with me. I also started to see some of the barriers that they experienced as they were going through school and then entering the workforce. And then when I was in college studying for my bachelor's in hospitality management, I started working for the Autism Society of North Carolina. And that was because of my own interest in family connections. But it ended up being a great experience for me. I worked as a behavioral support assistant, and that job actually led to working in the school system for a couple of years in a classroom for students with autism. That also taught me a lot about what inclusion and integration actually look like, which then you'll see in my business model. The separation that was made between our classroom and the non-autistic classrooms was so significant, and it felt like our students were really isolated. They were kept pretty separate. We weren't even in the building with the other classrooms. We were in a trailer behind the buildings. Like, there was just a lot. It felt really challenging to try to figure out how do we actually accomplish the goal of bringing these kids together, the non-autistic kids and the autistic kids, letting them engage together, be in classroom settings together without it feeling so manufactured and so foreign. We only see this student once a week when they come in for an hour of math class. It was very segmented. And so kind of playing out, it's if you go through your whole school experience being really separated from the community and the world around you, then you get to a point where you're trying to enter or integrate into it. That's going to be really hard for everybody involved and for different reasons, but it's not really setting you up for understanding, accessibility, awareness, acceptance, belonging, etc., which are all things that are really important to me. So that being said, I was daydreaming one day, legitimately daydreaming, which I love to do. And it was kind of if I could have any job in the world, what would it be? And instantly thought I would open up a restaurant that gave people a first chance or maybe a step back into the workforce. That stayed a daydream for a while and also wasn't very specific. And after maybe about a year of starting to verbalize that daydream to friends and family, I solidified that I really wanted to work with people with disabilities and that I wanted to start a restaurant in Greensboro. And then that set me on the path of establishing a business model and visiting other businesses that had disability employment models, checking out other organizations, deciding if I wanted to be a business or an organization, decided to be a business, figuring out a location, writing out my business plan, figuring out where I was going to get money, trying to decide on the concept and the name and the logo and the design and all of those fun and beautiful things that it takes to start something up. And then in October of 2018, there's a lot of details in the in-between, obviously, that go into creating that, into hiring a team, etc. But in October of 2018, the restaurant itself was launched. In that, a couple of key things to note about us, and then I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds of that in this video. There will be time to do that in others. But we have an integrated hiring model here at Chez Genèse, which means that 50% of our staff are disabled and 50% are non-disabled. I do think that there's a difference between inclusion and integration, and that difference is pretty key in how things play out and change a lot of the way that we are structured. So inclusion is something that's talked about a lot in the disability world. I think inclusion indicates here we are, right, as a group or as an entity, and through inclusion we are inviting someone who's previously been on the outside into the inside. You are welcome here, you are invited here, you are accepted here. That's important. It's not a step to discount or to dismiss. However, what that does is saying, here we are and this is how we exist, and you are invited to come join us as we currently exist. Whereas integration says, this is how we've existed based on the needs, the experiences, etc. of the people who are currently in this group. We invite someone new into the group, and then the integration looks like we now factor in who you are as a person, the needs, the experiences, etc. that you have, and we figure out, do we need to adapt and change and shift as an entity in order to make sure that we all are set up to have equal support, equal belonging, equal voices, opportunities, etc. And you keep doing that as new people keep being brought in. So that dynamic, that group, that entity is always shifting, it's always adapting, it's always changing, because it cares about each individual that's brought in. It's not just this is the way things are and this is the way things will always be, but you're welcome to be here if you would like to be here. It's truly a how can we shift and change who we are so that everyone who is here is safe, matters, belongs, has space, gets to contribute, etc. That brings us to the last point for today, which is, why do I hope that through the work that I'm doing, through this business, that we change the way that our world views and employs people with disabilities. I want us to be an experience where people can come, whether they work for me, with me, if they come to eat here, that they get to have an experience that challenges and shifts and changes the way that they may see or feel about disability and how it shows up or impacts the world. I hope, like when I was creating this video and the title for it, and I thought, I think Like right now, one of the things that makes us unique is that we do have a disability employment model, and it's an integrated hiring model, which is also unique in terms of disability employment. And so it makes sense that we talk about it. And there's something that also just feels a little icky for me about the title. You need something that'll grab people's attention. And also, I want to see our world get to a point where saying, hey, I started a restaurant that employs people with disabilities, raises the reaction, like, why would you need to specify that? Of course you do. Everyone hires people with disabilities. Hiring people with disabilities is the same as hiring people. Like, there's not this, oh wow factor to we've hired someone with a disability. And so for now, the oh wow factor that I hope people have when they experience Chez Genèse is the warmth, is the excellent food, is the amazing service, is the ambiance, is the way that they feel when they are in our space, how safe they feel, how welcome they feel, how taken care of they feel. Like, that's the thing that I want people to walk away from. And if they learn and experience the disability maybe isn't what they thought it was, then I would love for that to happen too. But I don't want the oh wow piece to be, look at you, you hire people with disabilities. How novel, how great. Like, yes, it has worked out well for my business. I have a great team, and they've been a big part of making my business successful. But there's so much further that we can push in our world, in our society, in our workplaces, in terms of what disability employment actually looks like. I know that I'm on the somewhat front end of that journey. We're almost 7 years old as a business. I've learned so much in those 7 years. 7 years from now, I know I'll look back on this video and be like, wow, young me who had all these thoughts and dreams, and some of them are right and some of them really needed to grow and develop. But I'm excited to get to do that process. I'm excited to welcome you into that process with me and to have you here today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, for being willing to think about what you think about disability and how that shows up in your world and in your life and in your experiences. And I hope that you'll join this community. I hope that you'll stay part of what we're doing here, whether you're local and you get to experience that with us, or you're online and you do that with us in a virtual space, but that you'll join along and subscribe and be part of this so that you can continue to do that internal work of thinking about our bias, thinking about our feelings, digging in and being willing to shift and grow and welcome other people in. So that's it for today. Thanks. I'll see you next time.